Story 1. Am I the a-hole for telling my in-laws exactly where my husband was when I was in labor? I gave birth to my son 10 weeks ago. I went through an exhausting period while I was nearing my due date. I was experiencing discomfort and wanted my husband by my side when I went into labor, but he'd go out every night to hang out at his friend's place and watch football games. I suggested that he play/watch games at home, just in case, but he was having none of it and said he had to attend game night at his brother and friend's place along with his buddies. He said there were certain, how can I describe it, rituals when watching a game, and he can't enjoy doing it at home or anywhere else. The night of our son's birth, my water broke while my husband was at his buddy's place watching a game. I called him and told him to get home and take me to the hospital. He said he was coming, but he didn't. I ended up calling my sister, she lives nearby, and she took me to the hospital. My husband showed up 2 hours later after he kept calling asking if I was still in labor and that he was almost done watching the game. He was able to make it on time for our son's birth, but I was furious with him, mad and disappointed. He apologized profoundly and has been working on regaining my trust and respect for him after what he's done. He's otherwise very supportive and involved in our son's care. Last night I was at my in-laws' house for dinner and we were talking about my son's birth date. My husband suddenly started recalling what happened that night and basically started lying about driving me to the hospital, waiting and feeling stressed out, and standing on his feet for so long without food or even water. I was confused, and I said no, none of this was true, none of this happened. In fact, he was watching a game when I went into labor, and I wanted him to drive me to the hospital, but he didn't show up till 2 hours later. My mother-in-law, who takes no crap from anybody, and whom everyone fears, lost it on him, asking if that was true, and he kept quiet. She started berating him left and right, telling him to sit down and shut up when he stood up to argue, then told him to stand up when he was sitting arguing. Everyone was laughing at how she basically treated him as if he was a boy in trouble. She kept saying, "Shame, shame, shame to you. This is not how I raised my children to treat their wives. Jordan, you are a disgrace, and I'm disappointed because of what I heard about you." He literally swallowed every bit of his mother's berating and didn't say anything till we got home, where he went nuts, saying I made him look neglectful, a bad husband and father, by telling the family about where he was, and said I shouldn't have said anything, but I argued it wasn't okay for him to lie and play hero in front of his parents. He said I just caused a rift between him and family and asked if I was happy now. Am I the a-hole? Should I not have said anything? You didn't make your husband look like a neglectful husband and father. He did. He did that by being a neglectful husband and father. It's that easy. He's the one who did it. You just revealed that when he lied about it. That's his fault. His embarrassment in front of his mom is his fault. And yes, you have said that he is working on regaining your trust and all that. Good for him. I hope he does a good job and can realize where he made his mistakes. But until he does, even if he does all that, he still gets to live with the truth of what he did, and now the rest of his family gets to know the truth. I'm sorry, you're not an a-hole at all for doing this. He's an a-hole, and now he gets to live with that and try and make up for it. Story 2. My family warned me I was dating a gold digger and I ignored them. 10 years later, I see they were right. I, now 35 male, met my wife Annabelle, now 34 female, when we were in college. My family was lower middle class and I was hustling to make sure student loans didn't kill me post-graduation. At first, everything seemed great. She was truly my rock through some really hard times. I struggle with anxiety and depression as well as imposter syndrome. She had her own struggles too. I thought we fit well. My parents and sister always told me that while she seemed nice enough, something was off. This only increased when Annabelle dropped out of college and shared her plans to become a housewife/stay-at-home mom one day, so she didn't need a degree. Back then, there was no guarantee that I would have a high-paying job, but I also didn't mind her staying home with our future kids. Then I got an offer for my dream job, 6 figures, company car, travel, the works. They'd also pay for me to obtain my master's, something that seemed out of reach considering I was drowning in student loan debt. I could finally move out of my parents' house and get one of my own. I used part of my signing bonus to buy an engagement ring for Annabelle. Because I began dating her prior to the money, I never imagined that she was with me for anything else. She loved me when I was a broke college student. We had planned our future back then. How was it different? My family tried to point out the red flags. Annabelle planned an over-the-top expensive wedding. She wanted the biggest house she could find. My signing bonus was drained rather quickly, and I was worried about not saving enough. I constantly told her to slow down. We don't need the best of everything. And she would, for a while, then it'd pick up again. We had 2 children together who are now 8 and 4. The big spending got worse when they came along, but again, I was okay with it. I was making good money, we could afford it. Annabelle grew up in a similar situation as me, so I figured she just wanted to spoil the kids. Then, I got laid off from my job. It was out of nowhere. The field I'm in has slowly begun to dwindle over the years. I stayed on as long as I could, but at this point, the company is going under. Annabelle was worried when I relayed the news, but I informed her that we had our savings, we'd be okay until I found work again. I was hired at a new company in a similar but different field within a month. The catch, I'm making significantly less. It's enough to live off of, we can stay in our house, but things need to change. I pointed that our kids can't go to private school anymore. We can't take multiple lavish trips a year, no more frivolous spending. She wasn't happy, but again, I gave her grace. It's a big adjustment, even for me. Just 2 months after I started at my new job, Annabelle came to me and said, "I don't think I can do this anymore." I was taken off guard, and we had several discussions that amounted to her taking the kids to be with her mother while we took a break. I already knew our marriage was over. No one can come back from a break unscathed. Sure enough, a few weeks after she moved out, she told me she wanted a divorce. She claimed we had grown apart, said I worked too many hours at my last job and I was never around. While it's true, I did work a lot. I was home every night for dinner. We had all of the weekend together. I traveled often, but she always came with me until our oldest started elementary school. She never complained about a damn thing. In fact, I once said I was tired from working a long week and I felt guilty that she was home alone with 2 kids, but she assured me she was happy. I asked her several times if it was about me losing money. She denied it up and down. She married me so young and needed to see what was out there. She put it all on me. Naively, I told myself that this was what happened when you marry your college sweetheart. You grow apart. I didn't want to believe that my entire marriage had been a lie. Within 2 weeks of filing for divorce, she was with someone new. The reality came crashing down. She tried to play it off as they just so happened to meet, but they moved fast. She was moving in with him within 3 months. They were engaged before our divorce was even final. This guy is a surgeon. He makes 6 figures a year. I don't know if the cheating began when I got laid off or before. I suppose it doesn't matter. We're divorced now. Due to my schedule, I only see my kids every weekend, and I hate it. I regret not making Annabelle sign a prenup as she got half of everything. My family's aware that she moved on, and I know they have their suspicions, but we've never spoken about it. In the 3 years since the divorce, they've never uttered, "I told you so," even though I deserve it. I went from loving Annabelle to despising her. I love my children very much, but I hate that I wasted 10 years on a woman who only wanted me for my money. I should have saved so much more, but she either squandered it on useless junk when we were married or took half in the divorce. God, I hate her. I feel really bad for this person because, yeah, it does really seem like she was just kind of in it for the money that he was providing. And granted, sure, there probably was love there at the beginning, and, maybe they did grow apart. Maybe there were other problems, and this was just what finally made her pull the trigger, but that doesn't make it okay with how she handled things and when she handled it, blaming him for working too much when she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, which is challenging in its own right, but still, when there's just one person making all the money and you want a lifestyle with all these vacations and a big house, you're kind of asking the other person to do more work. So it's unfair that she put all that on him. And even if there were other reasons for them growing apart, I'm not okay with the way that she handled things, at least from the perspective we're given. So I hope that this person is able to find someone who kind of moves their speed and they can be happier with. But, you just hate to hear it. Story 3. You want me to tell you every tuner I hear as a high school teacher? Okay. This was fun for me, and I was shocked how long it was allowed to go on for. I'm a high school teacher of an elective subject that lots of kids take and enjoy. I build great relationships and generally have the same kids for multiple years, so I get all of the tea spilled to me. There was an incident during and after school. I was in one space doing my thing, and some students who had been in another part of the building came in and said, "Mr. Teronk, there are people having intercourse in this other room." I follow them to the scene of the crime, and there is nobody there. I did all of the appropriate follow-up to see if anything actually went down, but nobody showed any crime, and no one actually saw anything. They just said they saw the couple come out of the room, and it smelled like intercourse when they went in after. Also, no cameras in that part of the building in question, a thing I had pointed out as a problem multiple times in the past. Fast forward like 4 months, and the principal calls me down to their office. They proceed to chew me out for not reporting the incident, it having finally made its way through the rumor mill up to the top. I tell them all of the steps I took to follow up at the time, and that it didn't seem like there was anything to report. The room didn't smell like intercourse to me, so it didn't occur to me to tell anyone about it. To be fair, it was early in my career, so maybe I was wrong. I asked them, in what I assumed would be received rhetorically, "So where's the line on what unverified evidence-free rumors I should be reporting?" And they respond, "All of them." Cue malicious compliance. I proceed to call and email them after every single conversation I have with a kid that could be even remotely construed as problematic. We're talking a minimum of 3 times a day, usually more, for 3 weeks straight, including weekends. The most satisfying was on a Friday afternoon at about 4:45. The principal picks up the phone, and before I can say a word, they say, "Okay, Mr. Teronk, you've made your point." The school being like, "Report every possible unverified rumor." Again, this is just that mentality where people in charge of schools seem to want to run them like terrible prisons where there can be no possible privacy or anything. Anything a student could possibly be doing that we don't like, we want to know about and squish down. We must destroy them if they step out of line, even but a fraction of a centimeter. It's ridiculous how over the top some of these principals and school boards are with this kind of stuff. So good on this teacher for doing something I just love so much, malicious compliance. If people give you a rule that you can use against them, by golly, do it. Story 4. Try to get me fired? Enjoy the end of your law career. I worked in a pizza shop back when I was in college. I worked with Sarah, a vindictive lady who would stir up a lot of drama. Sarah would pick a target and then bully them into quitting. Where I'm at, college students can receive welfare if their parents earn less than a certain threshold. I was ineligible for student support due to my parents' income, even though they didn't support me, and I desperately needed this job. Matt, a new hire, quit after Sarah's harassment. Sarah's attention then turned to me. Sarah would approach my supervisor and spout BS like, "Hey, Mr. Supervisor, I asked John where the snake is, and he said the snake is cutting pizzas." This while the supervisor was actually cutting pizzas. She would shout at me with extreme hostility. She wouldn't warn me if pans were hot, a major sin in the kitchen jobs. She conspired with her friends to accuse me of slacking off, even though they never complained about me until Matt quit. This took a toll on me. My hours were cut, impacting both my financial and mental well-being. I even considered dropping out of college because I was struggling to afford rent. Sarah was illegally claiming student welfare despite being employed by the pizza shop. You can only claim welfare if you are unemployed. Sarah, in the first year of her law degree, was also aspiring to become a lawyer. The thing about being a lawyer is that you need to be admitted to the bar to begin practicing. The law industry is very strict. Even proven allegations of plagiarism in college would make one permanently ineligible to become a lawyer. Frankly, she was stupid for defrauding the government. There's an anonymous complaints line for welfare fraud. Most of the time, the welfare department never follows up. Occasionally, however, they would send officials to investigate. This was one of those few times they followed up. I sent an anonymous tip stating the business, her schedule, her name, and her number. I was on shift when some officials from the welfare department came in informing us that multiple complaints were made against Sarah. I think my boss could have just told them to scram since they probably didn't have a warrant, but instead of doing that, he licked their shoes, showing them all of the CCTV footage. The officials then questioned Sarah. She panicked, confessing to everything. I felt no sympathy for her. As a law student, she should have known to remain silent. Long story short, Sarah received a suspended sentence which would most certainly disqualify her from becoming a lawyer. She dropped out of college while I continued to work at the pizza shop and eventually graduated with an associate's. I have an all-right job now. Honestly, sucks to be Sarah, but, she was defrauding or whatever that was, having a job while also taking welfare that could have gone to other students who needed that welfare, so shame on you for that, Sarah. Sarah was a jerk and a liar who was getting people fired and making other people absolutely miserable, so it's not like she's making friends that might help cover for her to get away with something, So yeah, I have no sympathy for Sarah losing out on this. She had to have known that she could get disqualified for doing something like this. She took a stupid risk and was a jerk. What did she think was going to happen? Story 5. Entitled Stepmother Wants Me to Stop Breastfeeding. So the context here. I, 28 female, and had my daughter Ida 3 months ago. My wife, female 35 Taylor. My stepmother Mary, 45, and stepbrother Tom, 11. Tom and I weren't close until I was pregnant. During the pregnancy, he became really interested in me and the baby and actually became quite clingy and needy of me. I felt weird, but when I tried to retreat, Mary and my dad said I was being cruel and miserable, and I had the chance to be a good sister, but was being selfish and rejecting him. Along with the pregnancy hormones, it made me feel guilty, so I let him come round a lot. Taylor has a chilled attitude, so has kept calm and just said she wants what I want, even though he has become resentful of her. I made it clear she was my wife, and any disrespect to her would mean he had to leave. He became focused on my bump and was touching it all the time. Mary thinks he's autistic, but no doctor has ever diagnosed him. I had Ida 3 months ago, and she's the best baby ever. She's so perfect, and I loved seeing my wife become a mother. She's a natural at it, and depends on our love for each other. I've decided to breastfeed and then pump so Taylor can use the bottle to feed as well. It's been going pretty smoothly, and honestly, it's something that allows us to bond with Ida. Often, Taylor will lay with me whilst I breastfeed, and we will spend time together with Ida sleeping on my chest. Apparently, Tom was very angry when he wasn't allowed into the hospital to see me or the baby, and he kicked off when we said only my mom and mother-in-law were allowed over until 2 weeks postpartum. When they did come over, he kept touching Ida's face even though we had asked him not to, as we're both in the medical profession, so don't want to expose our newborns to germs. When we had to get firm, Mary told us we were being horrible to a child and needed to stop. I had to feed, so went to the nursery, but he had followed, and when I started feeding, he came in and watched before I realized he was there, and he started asking me questions about breastfeeding. That was fine. But he's been watching me feed whenever he comes over when I don't realize, and then whenever he's been near me, he starts saying booby and reaching for my boobs, saying he wants to try and it's unfair only Ida gets it. We've tried reminding him that he's a big boy and she's only a baby, but then last week I woke up from a post-feeding nap to find him laying on top of me with his hands and face on my chest area. When we tried telling Mary and my dad that this was getting out of hand, she said we were discriminating against his autism, and we just didn't understand that I was his special person he focused on and I should be honored. I told her it had to stop as I was uncomfortable, and Mary said if I wanted him to stop, I would have to stop breastfeeding, as it was cruel to tease him without. This is stupid, right? My boobs did get significantly bigger during my pregnancy and have stayed that way after giving birth, so I could see how he would notice them, but it still feels wrong. I have people in my family who have autism, and absolutely you do have to understand, people who are neurodivergent in any kind of way, sometimes there are different ways to, interact to make sure that people are comfortable. That's totally fine. But there are also just certain societal rules and other people's comforts to take into account, and you don't get to just get rid of one person's comforts in order to give someone else who's neurodivergent exactly what they want all the time. They have to learn rules. I am not, I have my own issues with ADHD and stuff. And so, there are certain things that people accept about me, but I also have to be conscious that it's like, just because I might have certain issues with memory and stuff like that, doesn't mean everyone has to, cater to me to the point where it's to their detriment. This is just a really complicated way of saying all this, and I'm sure there are people in the comments who could put this a lot better. I'm fumbling over my words here, but I'm just saying that this person, she has a right to breastfeed her child and to not have someone else doing this to her, and it is the, parents of Tom is the name, their responsibility to help teach him that this isn't okay, all right? I feel like that's reasonable. Am I wrong, folks? Get in the comments. Story 6. Today I effed up by holding a grudge for 29 years against a kid at school who called me Carrot Boy. The names, including my own, have been modified to false names. About 29 years ago, I was in the 3rd grade. I took one of the carrot packs out of my lunchbox, the kind that came with a little cup of ranch dressing. All of a sudden, this kid Balthazar said, "Hey everyone, look, Tim is a carrot boy." Everyone at the whole lunch table started to laugh. I couldn't believe it. For some reason, that incident really stuck with me. Nobody really brought it up again, but I became self-conscious in elementary school for eating carrots. Later, I lost my self-consciousness, but all through school and into adulthood, I always thought of that and built it up in my head as this big, disrespectful insult to me. Whenever I eat carrots, the memory pops up, basically involuntarily. When I see carrots, I remember Balthazar going, "Hey everyone, look, Tim is a carrot boy," and hear the laughter. What you should know is that I'm from a small town, and although I left, a lot of the kids I knew are still there. I saw that over the holidays there was an impromptu high school reunion event scheduled. I decided to show up. I haven't seen these people in a long time. Well, who should be there but Balthazar? All of the sudden, the old anger welled up in me. I don't know what I was thinking. It seemed so ridiculous now, but I saw a big tray of carrots meant for everyone at the buffet table, and I picked up the entire tray and carried it to Balthy's table. I started eating carrots angrily. Everyone at the table and surrounding tables was staring at me. I then said, "Guess I'm still a carrot boy, huh?" I almost immediately realized my F-up when everyone looked at me like I was insane and had no idea what I was referencing. So I awkwardly asked Baltho and the other people around if they remembered him calling me a carrot boy in 3rd grade, and nobody did. So I was like, "This did happen, you really did call me a carrot boy." And he was like, "Okay, sorry man." Somebody next to me put their hand on my arm and whispered to me, "Are you okay?" As if I was having a mental breakdown or something. I was so embarrassed that I just got up and left. Multiple people had texted me asking if I am all right and why did I do that, and did I really hold a grudge for some innocuous, silly remark the 3rd grader made almost 30 years ago. When it was put to me like that, I realized maybe I was the one being weird. Balthazar wasn't like a bully or something. Aside from that one insult, he never did anything else to me, and in high school was kind of known as being a do-gooder. I had built it up as this major incident, but nobody else even remembered it. I was horrified to find that several people from the reunion unfriended me on Facebook, and I saw photos of the event, and somebody had tagged me in the background as Carrot Boy, and none other than Balthazar responded to the post asking the poster to remove the tag, even though several other people had replied with laugh emoji. Now I feel like I've made a huge fool of myself and can never show myself in this town again. Well, maybe that's okay. I don't like the town anyways, but I am so embarrassed I can hardly sleep, and it's been a few weeks since the incident. Oh, God. Oh. So you took what was, in actuality, a nothing incident, and 30 years later, you turned it into a something incident. You could have just let it be. And I get it. I've had those little things where someone has like said something to me in like grade school and it's stuck with me. It's in my head. And I have those things. I will remember them. And yeah, it is a moment to me, but I've also learned to realize that it wasn't anything to them. And it's nothing to everyone. Nobody cares about that but me. And so whenever I remember it, now I just kind of laugh and shove it to the side because who cares? But if you dwell on these things, even though it wasn't a big deal, you might end up making it a big deal. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.